Good morning, guys. I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we're gonna talk about Unit 3rd, which is Reading Comprehension. And I know many of you are kind of skilled in it, but some of you might feel like, it's kind of confusing. We need some steps to follow, right? Then here we're gonna talk about all the steps, what you need to focus, and how you can solve any kind of passages, right? So let me tell you what it is, right? So I have managed to put together a PDF filled with various reading comprehension exercise that you can find, right? And also it's a mix of different passages to make sure you're all set for the key part of the paper one, right? So let me tell you, in the UGC NET, the reading comprehension section is your chance to shine by showing off how well you can dive into a passage, right? Make sense of it and pull out the answers to some questions. It's like being a detective, but instead of solving a mystery here, you're unlocking the meaning of text. Right. This part is a big deal because it packs 5 questions with each one worth 2 marks, right? And that's total of 10 marks, right? And who wouldn't want to, bag all those points, right? So here's the thing. This RC, which is reading comprehension section, actually doesn't stick to one theme or topic. It's all about unseen passages, right? Which means you get to explore a variety of text, right? So while there is no list of topics to cram, this is actually a great news, right? It means you can practice with just about anything readable and it'll still count as your preparation. First off, make reading your daily habit. Newspapers, you can read blogs, magazine, whatever floats your boat, right? So the idea is to get comfy with different styles and topics because that's what you'll face in the exam, right? Now that I mentioned about the PDF, you will get it in the PDF section where you can download all these passages and practice. And I'll also, share all the guides, all the steps how you can solve a particular question, right? So there are like 6 steps that will follow. I'll tell you about it later in the session, right? And remember, it's like your personal training gym for RC skills, all these PDFs, right, that I mentioned. So working through it will definitely level up your ability to tackle any passage the exam throws at you, right? You know, remember, practice makes perfect, right? So the more you practice, the better you'll get. It's like prepping for a marathon. You wouldn't just kind of show up on a race day without running miles beforehand, right? Same deal here. Dive into practice passages, challenge yourself with questions, and review your answer to see where you can improve. So the RC section is your chance to score easy marks provided you have put in the work, that use that PDF guide as your secret weapon. Make reading a part of your daily routine and practice and practice more, right? So remember, every great reader was once a beginner, and with each passage you explore, right, you're stepping up your game for the UGC NET exam. So when you're diving into passages, it's like being a detective. You have got different scenes, which is your passages, right? Like mysteries, all these narratives and fact-finding mission, which is like expository text. Then we have debate, which is argumentative essays. Each one has its own vibe, and getting how they're set up is super cool, important, right? Now onto the secret weapon, your vocabulary, right? Think of it as your toolkit. The stronger your vocab, the better you'll be at unlocking the meanings and nuances in those tricky passages, right? So how do you kind of make it up? Read, and then read some more, right? So dive into everything from those dusty old classics to the latest news articles. And while you're at it, keep a little notebook of cool new words you encounter, right? So next up, playing the influence game. Sometimes what you need to know isn't going to jump out and say hi in your exam, right? You gotta read between the lines, connect the dots, and sometimes make a leap or two or grab the information you need. It's like putting together a puzzle without seeing the picture first, right? So, understanding what the author is trying to do is another key piece of the puzzle, right? And what's their goal? Are they trying to persuade you, inform you, or entertain you? So, these things you have to keep in mind, right? So, listening to their tone and figuring out their angle can really help you kind of get where they are coming from and what they are trying to say, right? Also, it's super helpful to get where the author is coming from, like their time, their world, the whole scene they were in, and when they wrote the piece. So this can help you to get the full picture and understand the deeper message they're trying to convey, right? And the more you read and analyze different kinds of text, from a scholarly article to novels and the news, the better you'll get, right? Not only will it help you read faster, but you'll also get way better at understanding and remembering what you read, which is a total win on the exam day, right? That's the game plan. Dive into different text, build up that vocabulary, right? And when reading, understand the author's moves and get the context. So keep practicing and you're going to crush it. You're going to bag all those 10 marks, right? Now, some other tips are there, like vocabulary, right? So, first thing first, your vocabulary is your best friend here. Imagine trying to solve a puzzle but missing half of the pieces. That's what tackling, reading comprehension with a limited vocabulary feels like. So, how do you bulk up your word bank? Read, and then read some more, right? So, dive into different genres and subjects. Also, flashcards aren't just for kids only, right? They're awesome for learning new words in a snap. There are tons of apps and tools out there to make this fun, right? Then we have skimming and scanning, which is also important, right? Think of it, skimming as your quick kind of preview, running through a trailer before watching the movie. It gives you the gist of what's going on, right? And the scanning, on the other hand, is like looking for your favorite snack in a packed pantry, right? You're searching for a specific information that answers the question, right? And mastering these techniques, which means you can spot key details faster, making you a question answering ninja, right? Then analyze like Sherlock Holmes, right? Now for the detective work, analyzing the passage and drawing conclusion is quite important, right? This isn't just about what the text says, right? It's about reading between the lines and figuring out what it means, what it stands behind the argument, or what could happen next. It's like being a text detective where every detail could be a clue, right? Then race against the time. It's very important. Time's is ticking, right? And you have got to be swift. You have to complete whatever the time you have assigned for this particular passage, right? So the reading comprehension section is a race against the clock. Managing your time wisely lets you allocate enough minutes to each passage and question, ensuring you don't end up in a mad rush at the end, right? And make so many mistakes, right? So that's very important. It's the tried and true way to get better. Mix up your practice sessions with different types of text and question formats. When you stumble, don't just move on. Dive deep into what tripped you up and learn from it. This is how you'll get sharper and more prepared. And why bother nailing reading comprehension? Well, it's very crucial. Well, aside from it being a chunk of the UGC NET exam, it's a skill that benefits you beyond the test. It enhances your ability to process information, right? Argue effectively and think critically. And these are skills that are gold in both your professional and personal life. First off, imagine having a guide that walks you through the whole reading comprehension section, right? It's like a piece of cake. right? That's what these notes are all about, and they're designed to give you a clear picture of what to expect, making your preparation smoother and way less stressful. Now, think about reading comprehension like a puzzle, right? Each passage you tackle is a mix of themes, ideas, and argument waiting to be uncovered, right? So, the cool thing about diving into these notes is that they are going to show you how to pick apart these passages, spot the important bits, and understand what's really being said. It's like training your brain to become a detective of sorts, right? And these honing those analytical skills to catch every clue. But here's the kicker, it's not just about understanding what you read, right? Or what you read. These notes are going to push you to think deeper. You learn to question the information, weigh the argument, and come to your own conclusion. It's this kind of critical thinking that's gold mine, not just for the UGC NET, but for tackling any kind of exam, right? And let's not forget about the confidence boost. Regularly practice with these notes means you're getting comfortable with complex text, and that's a big deal. It's like working out. The more you do it, the stronger you get it, right? So when the D-Day arrives, right, you'll walk in feeling ready to conquer those passages without breaking a sweat. Now let me tell you one of the important thing that you can do with the passage or answer the question is follow these steps, and I'll tell you how to follow these steps in 5 different kind of passages that I have collected, and we'll discuss them thoroughly so you can understand how to find the right answer, right? So remember these steps to solve. Every time you solve a question, you have to follow these 6 steps, right? First is understanding the question, right? What's the question really asking? It's like figuring out what game you're playing before you start. Get the main idea and what you need to look out for, right? Then identify key terms. Here you're spotlighting the important stuff in the question. You're just selecting those keywords and finding it in your passage, right? So imagine you're on a mission and these are your clues. They're your guide to finding the treasure in the passages, right? Think of this way, right? Now that we have next step, which is finding the relevant part of the passage, right? So dive into the passage with your clues in hand, right? It's like scanning a map for the X that marks the spot, right? You're looking for the paths that match up with your clues, right? Then analyze the passage. Put on your detective cap and start piecing things together. What's the passage really saying? How does it tie back to your question? It's all about connecting the dots, right? Then another important step is eliminating the other option. It's very important to find the correct answer, right? So it's time to play the game, kind of, one of these things is not like the others, right? So kick out all the options that don't fit or make sense. You're narrowing it down to the real deal, right? Then at the end you are left with the correct answer. Then you select the correct answer, right? After all that work, it's time to pick your winner, right? Choose the option that best fits what you have found and analyzed. It's your moment to shine and click that correct answer with confidence, right? Now that we have like 5 passages that we're gonna discuss very much in depth, so you will know how to follow these steps when you are answering the question, right? Let me give you the first passage, right? And the first passage is here in your screen, right? As you can see, when you're just scanning through it or skimming through it, you'll find it that it's all about geography, right? So something about geography, earth and its minerals, water, all these stuff, right? And what you're gonna do next, you're gonna read the question first, right? So it's asking about the time cycle of the system of nature follow thereon. So there are 4 options and 3 of them you have to eliminate and you have to find the right one. So the first thing what we're gonna do, we are going to understand the question. So what the question is trying to say, right? So the question asks what the time cycle of the system of nature follow. So this means we are looking for a word that describes the pattern or manner in which this cycle operates, right? So the simple next is we're gonna find identifying these key terms, our second step. So when we read the question, and in the question we find some kind of term which is what time cycles of the system of nature. So we have clear picture that we're gonna search for what time cycles of system of nature, right? Which clues us into looking for a part of the passage that discuss natural cycle or rhythm, right? So then what we are gonna finding the relevant part of the passage, that's our next step, right? Then what we are going to scan the passage for mention of time cycle. So as you can see in this passage we have, we found the sentence that talks about system in nature and their time, right? When we analyze the passage is like, you see, most system in nature display time cycles that are organized in a rhythm of their own as these time, right? So you can see we have found the line that it is mentioning. So we have clear picture that what is the answer, right? Then we are going to eliminate what are left. So we know that it's the rhythm in the line itself, we found it, but our next step is what we have to eliminate all the other options. So let's see, path is not mentioned in the context of the time cycle in the whole passage, right? Then process is actually discussed in the passage but refers to how factors affecting a phenomena produce a pattern, but not specifically about the time cycle, right? So we can eliminate it. Then we have cycle. We know cycle is mentioned many times in the passage, but the question is about what the cycle follows, right? Making cycle itself an unlikely answer since it would be redundant, right? So that could not be, because already it's mentioned in the question, so cycle could not be there. So our answer is what? Rhythm. So what we did, we found it that particular line and we came to the conclusion that the rhythm is our correct option, right? So guys, that's about the first question. Let me tell you another question. The same paragraph, the question says the view seen by a passenger looking out of the window of an aircraft. So we are looking for a passenger and the view seen by a passenger, right? So the first step we're gonna do, understand the question. So this question asks about what affects the view seen by a passenger in an aircraft, right? So we are looking for a term that influences the variation in the landscape observed from the aircraft, right? And what are the keywords? The second step, the key term is the question is the view seen by a passenger looking out of the window of an aircraft, right? So that is our keyword, view seen by a passenger looking out of the window of an aircraft, right? So it's directing us to find the passage segment discussing kind of views from an aircraft. So now we're gonna find the relevant part of this passage. And where can we find? So in the passage, when we are scanning through, this passage provides a detailed description of how the view changes for a passenger in an aircraft, right? For instance, you can see that we have one line. For instance, when a passenger on an aircraft looks out of the window, the view changes according to the scale. So right there we have the answer itself, right? Our next step is analyzing the passage. So the passage explicitly mentions that the view changes according to the scale. Simple, we found our answer. Right. So this means the scale at which the passenger observe the Earth's surface determines what they see, such as clouds, land, and water masses or land features. Right. So our next step is eliminating the other to just recheck it, right? To verify it that our answer is correct, not the other. Pattern refers to the variation observed in phenomena at a particular scale, which is a result of a scale but not what directly affects the view in the context. So we can eliminate. Then rhythm, which relates to the time cycle in nature that we discussed in our first question. So you can just see, we can eliminate easily these three options, and we are left with what? Selecting the correct answer. And given the explicit mention in the passage that the view changes with the scale, right? So scale is our correct answer. So the passage describes how at different scales or global continental, the passenger's view and what can be seen, right? Like clouds, land, and water masses. So, by focusing on the description of how the view from an aircraft changes based on a scale, right? So, we can confidently conclude that scale is what affects the view seen by a passenger as directly supported by the specific line in the passage. This method ensures that the answer is not just a guess but is rooted in the passage content, right? So now you can understand how we are going to find all the answer, and it's a very easy steps you can follow and you can answer the question confidently in the exam, right? And remember, follow all these 6 steps, very important if you really want to reach to the right answer, right? So the third question, what we're gonna do, we're gonna understand the question first, right? So this question is about the purpose of studying physical geography in the context of interaction between humans and nature. So we are seeking an outcome or goal of this study. Simple, right? So what we are gonna do, we have to find next is identifying the key terms. So what do you see in the question? So the key terms here are physical geography, then interaction between man and nature, and the purpose of this study. So this guides us to look for a part of the passage discussing the aims of physical geography, then finding the relevant part of the passage. That's our next step, right? So toward the end of the passage, you see there's a sentence that directly relates to the question, like physical geography works toward understanding the interaction between man and nature and also the results of this interaction in order to manage global climate change better, right? So analyzing the passage, our next step, the passage states clearly that physical geography aims to understand the interaction between humans and nature to better manage global climate change. So this indicates that the field is focused on addressing the outcome and challenges arises from the interaction, specifically in the context of global climate change. So we have the right answer right there, but we have to verify it by eliminating it, right? So option says understand global climate change, right? So is somewhat correct but too general and does not capture the proactive approach of managing or addressing the issue as stated in the passage. Then study the impact of man's activities on nature is a part of what physical geography does but does not encompass the goal of managing or addressing climate change, right? Then reduce man animal conflict, right, is not mentioned in the passage at all and is unrelated to the context, so easily it can be eliminated, right? Now what is our correct answer? So given the passage focus on managing global climate change as a result of understanding the interaction between man and nature, what is our answer? Is third, address the issue of global climate change. So people can be confused between one and third, like understand global climate, but clearly in that last sentence we can see it is talking about the results, right? So what is the result? The issue of global climate change. So we have the answer right there. I hope you understand. So you have to follow these steps and the answer is easy to find, right? Let me tell you the next question, which it is talking about what geography pattern, right? So first of all, what is our step to understand the question, right? So the question asks about the scale at which pattern studies the variation observed in a phenomenon within geography, right? So our next step is to find the key term, right? So the key term here is pattern, indicating we need to find the passage section that explains how pattern in geography are studied in relation to scale, right? So our next step is to finding the relevant part of that passage which mention all the key terms, right? So the passage clearly defines patterns follows, right? So the pattern is defined as the variation observed in a phenomena studied at a particular scale. Like we could just see it, the passage is already there, right? So next step is to analyzing the passage, right? So the definition provided in the passage explicitly state that the pattern studies are conducted at a particular scale, right? So this means the examination of variation within a phenomenon is focused on a specific level of structure or organization rather than being generalized across any of all scales, right? So we can just get the idea that what it is talking about, right? Then our next option is to verify our answer, right? One option is any scale, which kind of lack, right? Lack of kind of specifically mentioned thing, right? Which contradict the passage's emphasis on a particular scale, right? And every scale and most scale implies a broader or more generalized approach than what the passage is actually described. So the passage specifies that patterns are observed at a distinct singular level of organization, right? So now what we have to select the correct answer. We are left with what? A particular scale, which is option 1, right? So these step-by-step analysis ensure that our conclusion is directly grounded in the passage's content, right? Highlighting the importance of the specific wording used in the definition provided. So that's all. And let me tell you the next question, which is about the fifth question. And our first step is to understand the question. So the question focuses on what a passenger can see regarding the alignment of the landmass with other element during a flight. Let me repeat the question. The alignment of landmass with other elements can be seen by a passenger on a flight on a, right, where global scale or continental scale or local scale or time scale, right? So to answer this question correctly, we revisit the passage where it describes the view a passenger on a flight might observe a different scale, right? So first we understand the question that it is talking about a passenger can see regarding the alignment of landmass, right? Then we have to find the key terms. So in that question we found the key term like alignment of landmass with other elements and seen by a passenger on a flight. So we have here two key terms, right? So these guide us to look for a part of the passage that talks about the views from different altitude or a scale, right? So now our next step is to finding the relevant part of the passage, right? So the passage provides a detailed description of changing views at different scales. So at the continental scale, the passenger can see the shapes of the land features and how they are distributed. So the pattern emerges as the variation of land and water and the proportion of each. So we can see this whole line in the passage and we come to the conclusion that our answer would be what, at the continental scale, right? But then we analyze this passage and we came across this answer, right? Then we have to eliminate the other, like global scale, local scale, and time scale, right? So global scale is described as provided views of clouds, the sun and the moon without mention of the alignment or landmass, so we can easily remove this. The local scale is not mentioned in the passage at all, so we're not gonna take it, we have to eliminate it. Then time scale is unrelated to kind of spatial observation. Whatever we see, right, is more about processes and changes over time, not relevant to the visual alignment of geographical feature, right? And when we eliminate that, we are left with the right answer, which is at continental scale, and that is our correct answer, right? And by following these steps, that we solve all the questions based on all these 6 steps, you can understand how easy is the passage. It's like piece of a cake, you can easily bag all 10 marks or 5 questions right. Basic 6 steps you have to follow, and you will have your 10 marks, right? And you should not miss a single question. How much it is confusing, if you follow these 6 steps, you will end up the correct answer,